This session will discuss the assembly of the dashboard for the switch. This assembly sequence requires 2 Phillips screwdrivers. Let's review the parts we're going to assemble into the dashboard. The first is the emergency switch, then the high-low beam switch, the voltmeter for the auxiliary battery, the traction battery voltmeter, the ammeter, the 3-way position switch for forward, neutral, and reverse, the ignition switch, and 4 indicator lights. These 4 lamps indicate different things to the driver. The amber light indicates that the parking brake is on. The red light indicates an incident with the inertia switch. The blue light indicates the charger is plugged in. And the green light indicates that the system is energized, the key switch is on, and the system is ready to go. These lights fit in the 4 holes at the bottom right of the dashboard. The lights may come shipped with their wiring bundled together, and you may need to take this wiring apart before you put the light through the hole in the dashboard. Just undo the zip tie or rubber band holding the wire together. The lights are held into position by little clips that expand out once they're in the opening. So we're just going to install them in the order from left to right: amber, red, blue, and then green. We'll take a look at the little clips on the side of the final lamp before we press it into place. And here we can see the little clips that expand out and hold the light in place after it's pressed into its position in the dashboard. No other hardware is needed to hold the lights into place. Next, we'll install the key switch for the ignition. The first step for the ignition switch is make sure that the back nut is installed on the threads. Because of the size of the dashboard and the length of threads on the switch, we want the back nut to be as low as possible on the threads. Insert the key switch from the back of the dashboard and install the front locking nut. Just get everything hand tight so we can still position the key in the right orientation. The key has 3 positions, and we want the notched portion of the key downward. The first position is off. The middle position is the auxiliary power is engaged, and the far right position is the ignition is on. Next is the directional switch for forward, neutral, and reverse. The forward, neutral, reverse directional switch also has a back nut on the threads. We want to make sure that this is engaged before we insert it from the back of the dashboard. The finishing nut on the passenger side of the dashboard has 2 surfaces. One is finished and one is not finished. We want to make sure that the finished surface is the one facing outward, and then we'll attach that nut. After a trial fit, we can adjust the back holding nut behind the dashboard so that it emerges at the proper height. And then we'll put the finishing nut on the other side and tighten the assembly down. It's more intuitive to have this switch with the forward position up, neutral, middle, and reverse down than if it were sideways. We recommend you put it in this position. Next, we're going to install the ammeter, and we're going to turn the dashboard upside down to put this in. We're going to insert it from the front and put the mounting bracket on the back and tighten it down. You can see the technician is holding the front side of the gauge with his hand so the surface doesn't get scratched when he installs it. The bracket fits over the back of the gauge, and 2 plastic nuts hold it into place. You can just hand tighten these nuts. It doesn't take much to hold the gauge into position. We'll take a look at the front of the dashboard, and we can do some final alignment and make sure the gauge is in the proper position. The next gauge is the voltmeter for the main battery pack or the traction battery. And we'll install this the same way. We put it in from the front, align it, and attach the bracket and the two nuts on the back part of the gauge. You'll notice that when the gauge is in the upright position, that the two mounting bolts are in horizontal position on the back. This is a good way to determine if you have the gauge in the right position if you're only looking at the back of the dashboard. So you can line up your gauge and install it the same way we did the ammeter, front to back, putting the bracket on and tightening down with the two nuts. We'll do some final adjustment when all three gauges are installed so we can see the alignment and make sure they look aesthetically look good on the dashboard. Our third gauge for the dashboard is the state of charge meter for the 12-volt battery, the auxiliary battery. And this is going to go in the same way, front to back, has the bracket and the two mounting nuts that go onto the poles at the back of the gauge. So we also install this front to back, put the bracket on, and the two locking nuts. And we'll get everything hand tight and line everything up so that it looks good on the dashboard. So we'll take a look at the front of our dashboard and make sure that our three gauges are aligned properly, and then do the final tightening on the hand nut so that everything's locked into position. Next is the high-low switch for the headlights. The back of the switch has an indicator that tells us which is the upper portion or the high position for the high beams, and we want to make sure that that position is at the top when we insert it into the dashboard. This switch has a rather tight fit into the dashboard, so you may have to twist it into place and get it in snugly up against the back of the dashboard, and then we'll insert the locking nut on the back. So we'll take a look from the front, make sure it's lined up vertically so it looks good aesthetically, and then attach the locking nut. And again, this is just hand tightened. There's no need to torque it down with any force. It's going to be good just by hand tightening it into place. This is the emergency stop switch, or e-stop. This is a little bit tricky in that we have to remove the top portion of the handle in order to insert it through the dashboard. This handle unscrews from its post, but we need to back hold it so it can be taken off the post, and we do this with the smaller screwdriver. There's an opening in the post where we insert the small screwdriver and back hold it from turning as we unscrew the red portion of the handle. With the red handle removed, the emergency switch is inserted from the back of the dashboard with the tongs pointed downwards. So we insert the switch and then mount it with the two screws to either side of the post. With the switch in place, we're going to put the red handle back on. Again, we back hold the post with the smaller screwdriver and tighten up the post by hand. So to review the components we've just installed into our dashboard, we have the emergency shut-off switch, the headlight high-low beam switch, the voltmeter for the 12-volt auxiliary battery, the voltmeter for the traction battery, the ammeter, the forward, neutral, reverse directional switch, our key switch with positions for auxiliary power and ignition on, and our 4 colored system indicator lamps. The green indicates the system is on. The blue indicates the charger is on. The red indicates we have an event with the inertia switch, and the amber indicates that the parking brake is on. The other openings in the dashboard will be used when we mount it to the vehicle, and we'll see about those later. This concludes our assembly of the switch dashboard.